Thank you, Kelly and Brian, for that lively discussion. My name is Nichole Francis Reynolds, and I am ServiceNow's Vice President and Head of Global Government Relations. I am thrilled to lead this very important discussion with some amazing members of Congress. We will talk about tech modernization, diversity and inclusion, and how we can empower women in the federal workplace. We are delighted to be joined by 4 amazing members of Congress. They will play a pivotal role in the development of the next infrastructure bill, as well as crafting legislation that will help the federal government modernize its technology. These members are also leading the way to ensuring that the Congress is a reflection of America and will work with the private sector to ensure that we do the same. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty is of the great state of Ohio. Go Buckeyes. And she is a member of the House Financial Services Committee. She also serves as the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion. She also serves as the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's quite busy, as you can tell. We are also delighted to have Congressman Andre Carson of Indiana. Yes, he's a Hoosier, and he serves as a member of the House Intelligence Committee and the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. We are also delighted to have Congresswoman Terry Sewell from the great state of Alabama, who sits on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. I had the absolute honor of serving as her chief of staff for nearly 4 years, and I have lots of stories to tell. Those stories will go to the highest bidder. And finally, we are absolutely delighted to have Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, and I think that she's a Gator. We're just delighted to have her today. And she sits on the powerful Appropriations Committee. She is also the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Military Construction, Veterans, and Related Agencies. Thanks so much for being with us today. Congresswoman, or shall I call you Chairwoman, you have broken so many barriers throughout the years, and I am so honored to have been mentored by you and to continue to be mentored by you. You know, the theme for this panel is Choose to Challenge. And given all of the barriers that you have broken throughout the years, which barrier are you most proud of?
Thank you for inviting me and to join my colleague to be here today. When you think of barriers and you think of challenges and you're a Black woman, there are many of them, but I'm grateful that I stand on the shoulders of so many women who came before me. But I really think it was my entree into running for public office. You have to remember, when I was running in the State House, we didn't have a great number of women who had ran or ran and won who looked like me, let alone I decided to not only run, but I wanted to break barriers. I wanted to be the first woman Democrat to be the House leader, not Black woman. We had not had a female to ever lead our Democratic caucus, let alone win the majority and deliver us into the speaker's chair. And so for me, when men and some women told me that they wouldn't support me because I was Black, and I would never raise, at that time, $7 million that you had to raise to maintain the minority. So I'll end it well. I raised $9 million and I delivered the majority in the speaker's chair. And that was probably one of the most difficult things against the odds that I had to do. And in some ways, it propelled me to where I am today, serving in the United States Congress.
And that is amazing. And that is quite a ceiling that you shattered and a barrier that you overcame. And we all stand on your shoulders and are just so proud of all that you're doing in Congress. I have one more question for you, and I know that you have to get back to the House floor. Tell me this, how can companies like ours truly prepare the federal government to embrace what we call digital transformation? We have this amazing platform called the Now platform, and we are modernizing workflows and making technology and making the world of work better for people. How can we help you?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you and thanks for all that you do. We're so proud of your leadership, and we remember you when you were on our team, and now we get to be on your team as well as you with us. I think it's important for us to develop partnerships. When you think about the age of technology now and how we operate and how we communicate, I think it's important for us to figure that out, and we have to do it together. I think it's important for companies like yours to embrace not only the Congressional Black Caucus, but our work in diversity and inclusion and equity, which is so important. I think we can learn from one another. I'm so proud that under our policy councils, technology is one of them, racial and equity and justice is one of them. And so I think we do it by exerting our power and our message. And you're going to hear that every time you have a CBC member. We're going to be bold and talk about our power. So we should embrace one another. We could add you to our agenda. I think one of the things, lastly, that we don't do enough. We don't tell our stories and talk about it externally. We talk within the caucus extremely well. We stand together, we advocate together. But one of the things under the new leadership, which is not just me, it's the entire 58 members that we're going to be inclusive.
So Congressman Carson, we are delighted to have you here today. And I stand on your shoulders as well as the other members of Congress that we are talking with today. You know, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who sits on the powerful Financial Services Committee, and she's also the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's on the Appropriations Committee, and my former boss, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, who's on the Ways and Means Committee, which is a powerful committee as well. I truly stand on all of your shoulders, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to come and talk with me today.
Let me just say how honored I am to be here with the Chairwoman Beatty, who is not only a phenomenal leader, she is an excellent public servant. I had a chance to spend some time with her in her district many years ago. And you can always tell things about a person when you go to their home front. And when I tell you people love them some Joyce Beatty, I said, wow, for good reason. And she's connected to the people. She could go to the White House. She could go in the middle of the hood. She can go in the middle of a cornfield and she'll get that kind of respect. So, you know, I was raised by strong women like my grandmother, Congresswoman Julia Carson, the first Black woman to represent Indy. Now I'm raising a strong young woman, my daughter, and I'm continually inspired by the amazing women I work with in Congress and back home in Indy. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And, you know, Congresswoman Beatty and I are Buckeyes. And so anytime that you come to Ohio, we will always embrace the Hoosiers. Just want you to know that.
Our sister state. Thank you.
So one of the questions that I have for you is, you know, as a member of the House Transportation and the House Intelligence Committee, we know that President Biden's mission, along with many of you in Congress, is to modernize the technology that the federal agencies use. And given where you sit on the Intelligence Committee, what can we do as a company or as a representative of the private sector doing all that we're doing to help you as you think through how to modernize those intelligence agencies or how to modernize transit systems, expand broadband, synchronizing traffic lights, et cetera? What can we do to help you?
No, that's a great question. I think the first and probably most basic way that the private sector can help strengthen the relationships is through critical partnerships. And I think it's important that we maintain those open lines of communication, partnerships with the FBI and DHS to communicate threats on the cyber front. And this communication is tremendously important. And for those companies that are unusually susceptible to attacks or interference, should be very vigilant and especially dedicated to maintaining those close relationships. That's especially true of companies heavily involved in critical supply chains or software and technology companies. The new cyber struggle includes election interference, socio-political disruption, economic competition and emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. This whole range of governmental approach, it really requires a national commitment to guard against those threats. As we're working through many of our intelligence issues and trying to repair relationships that have been frayed with our Five Eyes partners and other critical partners, I think another way that the private sector can be important is by sharing expertise. We are in the process of negotiating an infrastructure bill. We have over 15,000 roads and bridges that have to be repaved and rebuilt. But also with that, as our vehicles are getting smarter and becoming more autonomous, our roads have to get smarter, which means we have to build smart roads. So the private sector will be critically important in not just rebuilding our intelligence apparatus, but also playing a role in being critical as we talk about infrastructure and what that looks like going into the 21st century.
That's amazing, and we look forward to working with you and the other members of Congress on the committee of transportation and infrastructure. And Congresswoman Beatty sits on the Financial Services Committee, and we know that the banking sector will need to modernize. And we just recently announced a $100 million racial equity fund to just improve and strengthen African-American communities. And we will be deploying that capital through a host of banks and CDFIs and African-American owned banks. And they too need that technology so that they can do the good work that their mission entails. I have one more question for you, because I know that you too have to go and get back to getting ready to vote. That question is about barriers and empowering women. And you mentioned that you stand on the shoulders of your mother, who was a force in Congress, and you are grooming your daughter to be a force in this world. What barrier are you most proud of shattering, and what are you doing to empower more women in your office, at home, and anywhere that you go?
Yeah, so my chief of staff is a woman, my legislative director is a woman, my district director is a woman. I love the men in our organization, but having been raised around strong women, I understand the importance of having that ingenuity and brilliance there. I think legislatively, most recently, is the Paycheck Fairness Act. It's something I supported. Along with Lilly Ledbetter. But for women of color, we see a huge gap in terms of pay equity. Women in America make about 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. For women of color, the gap is even wider. So this disparity results in women losing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout their career, saving less for retirement, receiving less in Social Security and even pension payments. And this gap not only hurts women, it also hurts entire families, and it stunts economic growth. And so these kinds of pieces of legislation are important to give women greater ability to provide for themselves, their families, and their future.
So thank you so much for all that you're doing in Congress and all that you're doing as a male to empower all of us. Thank you for empowering me throughout the years as I was a staffer and just growing my professional career as a in the world of government relations. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the chance for letting me share the stage with Madam Chair, and ServiceNow should give her a plaque. That's your next task. No, I'm kidding.
A virtual plaque.
A virtual plaque.
Plaque. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us today. I truly stand on your shoulders and had the honor of serving as your chief of staff for nearly 4 years. And as I've told the audience earlier, I have lots of stories to tell them.
I'm up for re-election every 2 years.
I learned so much from you, and I really do believe that it helped prepare me for this role at ServiceNow. So thank you. The topic or the theme of this panel is Choose to Challenge, and you have broken so many barriers, have shattered so many ceilings. So my question to you is, which ceiling are you most proud of shattering?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I know that I would not be where I am now in Congress. and on the powerful Ways and Means Committee had it not been for the fact that I chose an amazing chief of staff in Nichole Francis Reynolds. I know that, to whom much is given, much is required. And it's just so great to see how you have blossomed. But more importantly, I hope you're proud of the team that you helped me assemble that has really catapulted me to leadership positions within the United States Congress. And that was because I had an amazing chief of staff. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this great discussion. When I think about my life, I grew up in my district. To have the opportunity to represent the Civil Rights District of America, the cities of Birmingham, Montgomery, and my hometown of Selma, Alabama, I know that I stand on the shoulders of amazing people ordinary people, many known and unknown, that really paved the way for so much of the success in civil rights that we've seen in this nation. Ordinary people who had the audacity to make this country live up to its ideals in the Constitution of equality and justice for all. Mm-hmm. My challenge each and every day, as you know, Nichole, is to provide resources, better resources, more resources, better opportunities for the amazing people that I have the honor of representing each and every day. I know that education was truly the equalizer in my life. The opportunity to grow up in little Selma, Alabama, never did I think that I would ever get a chance to go to Princeton, Oxford, Harvard Law School. But when I think about it, perhaps what set me on my course was graduating valedictorian of Selma High School, the first Black valedictorian of my little high school. It was the opportunity there to be nurtured by amazing teachers and to be on the debate team. We had a really great debate coach who taught us about critical thinking. And I happened to have won lots of little trophies over the 3.5 years that I was on the debate team. And it was that acknowledgement that drew the attention of an alum from Princeton, Julian McPhillips, as you know, who really helped me go to college at Princeton. And when I think about it, it was the step from Selma to Princeton that was the biggest leap for me, both literally and geographically. But Princeton winning a scholarship to go to Oxford, Oxford going to Harvard Law School becoming a partner at a firm, those were smaller steps. So when I think about sort of my life's trajectory, it was the people in Selma who nurtured me, told me I could be somebody, and I believed them. But as you know, it is an honor of a lifetime for me to have a full circle moment, to be a college intern for my member of Congress when I was in college. I worked 3 summers in Washington, D.C. on the Hill for my member of Congress. He was Richard Shelby. He's now my United States Senator. But he was a Democrat back then, and he was a House member for 14 years before he became a senator. And I tell him he went to the wrong side, but that's okay. It's nice to have friends on both sides, as it were. And so, but the opportunity, no matter how, the opportunity to witness him doing his job every day, to walk the halls of Congress as a college intern, and then 28 years later to have a full circle moment and to be the member of Congress myself. I think that you really have to see it, to achieve it, to be it. And I think that that's where I think corporations such as your own, ServiceNow, and others can play a big role in making sure that they are not just talking the talk, but they're actually walking the walk, and that they are their excellence is reflected by the diversity in their hiring, in their in their clientele, even in the people that they choose to employ, to provide services to you all, whether it's their IT department or I think it's really important that we expand diversity. And so when I think about my journey to Congress, it clearly wouldn't have been possible without Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to walk the halls of Congress. Never did I think that in 2010, it would take 2010. She was elected in 1968. And it took, almost 40 years before the state of Alabama elected its first Black woman, myself. And I think to whom much is, given, much is expected, as I said. And I think that it's incumbent that I'm not the only one, right? Even my journey to college, I may have been the first person in my high school ever to go to an Ivy League school, but I wasn't the last. And while I was very proud of my little degree from Princeton, I was even more proud 5 years, after I left, that another person from my high school got a chance to go to Princeton. So, it's about each one teach one and building on that. And when I think about women, and I think about my journey, I think about the time that I met Shirley Chisholm, as you may remember. I know you know all of my stories, but I wrote my senior thesis in college on Black women in politics. Our time has come. Now that was in 1980. I can truly say, with the election of so many women from such diverse backgrounds, first Native American women, first Muslim American women, really Congress is really now truly reflecting the diversity that is the beautiful tapestry of America. But when I think about meeting Shirley Chisholm, she had retired from Congress at that point, and she was teaching at Mount Holyoke College. What's important about that journey as we celebrate Women's History Month is that I find myself being asked some of the same questions that I asked Shirley Chisholm as part of my thesis. And what's really interesting is that I have some of the same responses. I asked Shirley, I asked Congresswoman Chisholm, as between race and gender, which was the biggest barrier for you being in politics? And she looked at me and without missing a beat, she said, unequivocally being a woman. Now, Nichole, for me to have to say the same thing, 30 years later, what does that say about us? That says that we as women often, we count ourselves out as the candidate. We're so used to being more comfortable in the background, the one making the calls, the one putting out the signs, the one, and not necessarily seeing ourselves reflected as the leader. And I think it's incumbent upon us to not count ourselves out, but rather stand up and be counted. That doesn't mean that everyone needs to run for an office, but it does mean that we should be seeking to break glass ceilings wherever they exist, whether it's in the halls of Congress or in the boardroom or in great companies like yours. So I think it's important that glass ceilings are broken, but they're shattered, and that others follow suit. So it's great that we have Kamala Harris, but as Vice President Kamala Harris now, often says, she wants to make sure that she's not the last one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we will continue to bloom where we're planted. And speaking of planted, you sit on the powerful Ways and Means Committee, as we discussed earlier, and we're so proud of you. And, when we talk about access to technology, and I know that your father was a basketball coach and your brother is also a basketball coach. ServiceNow is the official workflow partner of the NBA and the WNBA. And we were the ones who managed the digital workflows during the bubble, so that the NBA players could play and the WNBA players could play. And we're really proud of that. And so our mission really is to make the world of work better for people. We want to help states modernize their unemployment systems so that the constituents that you serve, when they're faced with a pandemic like this, can use their mobile phones or use their computers, which is another issue, right? But to have access to the app, the state app, so that they can access it quickly. Given where you sit on the committee and the jurisdiction that you have over healthcare, vaccines and having access to technology for scheduling and et cetera, or trade, what can we do to work with you so that we can help you modernize not only the federal government's technology, but states and cities as well?
Great question. As a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, I have witnessed firsthand how critically important the private sector is in providing equitable access to the most modern resources and technologies. And I think that what ServiceNow does, what you've done for the NBA, what you could do for these labor offices all across the state, because I can tell you, the problem that so many of my constituents had when we passed the unemployment benefit and had a extra money for the federal pandemic benefit on top of that. Our Department of Labor in the state of Alabama totally could not handle it. They couldn't handle, they had a legacy system that just wasn't compatible and just couldn't. And while we gave them resources to upgrade, the reality is people needed their money now. They needed that benefit in their pocket to be able to afford food on the table, to be able to afford to upgrade their home to be able to have internet. And so many of the rural parts of my district don't even have internet. So, I mean, first and foremost, working with private sector and providing the right incentives through the tax code, which is also under the jurisdiction of Ways and Means. So we have a lot of things that are within our jurisdiction, be it trade, promoting innovation and opportunities abroad and at home. We also have healthcare, as you said. I sit on the health subcommittee and the tax subcommittee. And I think it's critically important that we use the tax code to incentivize the behavior we want to see, to promote greater public-private partnerships that can benefit people. I'm proud of, for example, being a champion for new market tax credits to spur economic investment in our most underserved communities, particularly after the COVID pandemic has hit. It has really shined a bright light at the systemic disinvestments in broadband. I mean, now you need broadband for everything, whether it's telehealth or telecommuting or distance learning for our children. It is now imperative that every town, every municipality, every place have broadband. It's now a critical infrastructure, just as critical as a telephone is. So I'm looking forward to working with this administration and with private sector to improve our access to broadband. It's now if we could figure out how to get electricity to every hamlet and every village, we have to be able to do the same thing for broadband. And I think that will only increase the demand for creative ways and solutions like ServiceNow. And I think that is a good thing, because our communities cannot have access to the most modern technology, most modern resources if they don't have access to broadband. Absolutely. We need all hands on deck strategy to get these essential utility to every sector, whether it's rural communities or underserved urban communities. It's critically important that we do that. And so once we can do that, we can work with private sectors to build digital services that help streamline my constituents' access to government services and government resources. And so I look forward to being able to partner with you all in doing just that. I think we have to first lay the groundwork for that critical infrastructure to be truly accessible to everyone. But clearly, I see the need for streamlining services and using digital platforms in order to do that is a great way.
Absolutely. And we have a fantastic apprenticeship program called Next Gen. And we look forward to coming in and talking with you, or Zooming and talking with you more about that as well, because we'd love to work with some of the colleges in your district, like Miles.
Absolutely. I have some great colleges, University of Alabama, Roll Tide, the national champs. Yes. But I also have some amazing HBCUs, Alabama State University, my mom and dad's alma mater, Miles College, just so many really great resources. And when you asked about what can companies like yours do, especially in this era when we're talking about a racial reckoning that really has to take place, not just in the criminal justice system, but throughout our society, we need to come to terms with our very painful past, but we have to also build for the future. And I know it's like corporations like yours that must walk the walk and not only recruit through summer apprenticeship programs, but retain diverse workforce, promote a diverse workforce. And I want to see women in every realm. I was honored to sit on the Intel committee. And as you well know, Nichole, I got on there as a sophomore. And one of the things that we were all shocked in is how much money is spent in a classified setting for our national security, and how few women and people of color, who looked like me, came before that classified committee asking for trillions of dollars. And for me, it's about, to use a sports analogy, since both of us are big basketball fans, but, no one can afford to be on the bench. You can't have critical talent not be accessible and in the arena, making it happen. And so
Right.
I just think that it's good business to promote diversity in its hiring, in its retention and promotion. And I know that ServiceNow is on its way with someone such as yourself involved at the highest level. And I'm so proud of you, Nichole. And I know that that you are going to do great things for ServiceNow, as you did for me and my staff. But I think that it's important that we who have these positions also continue to promote, so that we're not the only ones in the room. And when we do get in these rooms where it happens, we need to make sure that we are willing to speak up and speak out, that we use our voices to carry our life experiences to those decision-making tables. And only then can we see, I think, real solutions that can affect everyone.
Absolutely. Well, Congresswoman, I know that you have to go and vote, but I just want you to know that on behalf of our CEO, Bill McDermott, and our General Counsel, Russ Elmer, and the 13,000 employees across the world who will be watching, thank you who are watching, thank you so much for being here today and participating in this Fed Forum, and we look forward to working with you down the road. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a great pleasure for me, and I just want to say, as we acknowledge, Black History Month ending, Women's History Month, the month of March, I think it's so important that companies such as yourself really celebrate, but also educate about all the wonderful things that we can do to move this forward. I started by saying that I stand on the shoulders of so many people, but as you remember, I had the wonderful pleasure of having Amelia Boynton Robinson, the very first woman to run for my seat in Alabama. She was bludgeoned on a bridge in my hometown of Selma during Bloody Sunday for the right of everyone to vote. I had her as my special guest in 2015 at the State of the Union, and everyone came up to her. She was a frail woman at this point, 103 years old, when she was our special guest, meeting Barack Obama for the first time. And, everybody said the same thing. I stand on your shoulders. She said, get off my shoulders, all of you, do your own work. So my parting words is that we have to do our own work in order to make this nation truly great and make our companies, and whether it's private sector, public sector, the reality is that there's much work that needs to be done in the area of human resource, in the area of diversity, in the area of workforce capabilities, that we have a lot of work to do. And so it's okay to be the first. It's definitely not okay to be the last. And it's okay to break ceilings, but we want to shatter ceilings so that we are really making room for the true diversity that is America. So thank you for the opportunity to say hello.
Thank you. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining ServiceNow's Fed Forum today. We have a phenomenal federal team, and this panel has been amazing. And as I've mentioned to Congresswoman Beatty and Congresswoman Sewell and even Congressman Carson, that I truly stand on your shoulders and the shoulders of others, stemming from working on Capitol Hill with your former roommate, Congresswoman Sewell, and shepherding me through how to balance working on Capitol Hill while carrying 2 children. And I just remember asking you, how can I continue being a chief of staff while pregnant the second time? And your answer to me was, just do it. Just do it. And I've been doing it. And thank you so much. On behalf of our Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of our CEO, Bill McDermott, and Russ Elmer, who's our general counsel, who cannot wait to meet you, we just want to thank you. We have 13,000 employees all across the world, and our CEO dreams big. And when he asks me to do things, I seem to have no problem doing them. And I think it's because he knows who I've worked for and who I've worked around. And so he continues to test and challenge me. And so thank you for all of your training. Our mission is to make the world of work better for people. And we do that through our Now platform. We digitize workflows, and we have been working with over 300 federal agencies in the effort to modernize their technology. And whether that's from working with the Army to make sure that the soldiers can report their incidents with any sort of housing by using our housing application so that they can resolve their problems, to working with HHS to figure out how to modernize their HR systems. We're really on this mission to make government work for the constituents you serve. You sit on the powerful Appropriations Committee and are subcommittee chair of one of the critically important subcommittees for us with the military. What can we do to help you as you try to, develop legislation to modernize the federal government?
Well, first of all, Nichole, I'm so proud of you, and really you made it look easy, but understandably, like any woman, really any person, but women especially, who really look at the idea of having it all, equaling perfection, making sure that you can balance work and family is such a critical issue for your ability to both be a good employee as well as be a good parent and a good family member. So thank you for modeling such incredible leadership and paying it forward to help other women that come after you. That having been said, the role that I play as the chair of the Military Construction and VA Appropriations Subcommittee is one that, by definition, we take care of the individual throughout their entire life cycle in the military, from the beginning of their active duty service all the way through to being a veteran. And it's the only committee in the Congress that covers that whole life cycle. And as an intricate part of our work in both the military and the VA, there are public-private partnerships. Privatized military housing is one of those. And it's been a vexing problem, frankly. There really was, with the privatization, what we discovered during our oversight of the huge problems that have arisen with the privatized military housing, it was discovered that the military really ended up shifting the oversight completely to the private sector and really took a very hands-off approach for far too long and left the quality of life of the military that lived in those residences severely wanting. So we just a couple of weeks ago had another in our series of oversight hearings. We've been taking steps to make sure that the military has the resources to add that important layer of oversight. But the importance of the mechanization of the responsiveness to the people who live in privatized military housing is so important. When I toured military bases and went through some of the really horrendous conditions with people who lived in that housing, their ability to actually get responses when there was a problem was so antiquated. It was all completely just based on the response of a human, and they really didn't have a way mechanically, easily to be able to report the problems that they had, for there to be follow-up. And so the work that ServiceNow does is really a way to be able to help make sure that that the military can more easily serve the folks who live in their privatized housing, and that the residents of that housing can get the responsiveness that they need. And there's just so much more that we can look at. But frankly, we do have to make sure that the private sector, in participating and being partners in a public-private partnership, are responsive and responsible.
Absolutely. And we look forward to working with your staff and other members on the Appropriations Committee to highlight some of the great work that we've been doing within the military branches and frankly across the country and even across the world to either modernize how constituents receive unemployment benefits, to helping with scheduling for the vaccine, you name it, synchronizing traffic lights. We're doing a whole host of things.
With the VA, we have the Electronic Health Records Maintenance Program that, is taking an extraordinarily long time to develop and implement, but when it is developed, we're utilizing an off-the-shelf private sector product, It'll allow there to be a seamless transition with someone ending their military service, having been served by that same system, and then the same system being used once they go over to the VA and have service from that agency. Unfortunately, it's going to take another decade for us to get there, but it is important that we get there for service.
Yes, absolutely. And the VA is one of our largest customers. And so we are working closely with them to just modernize their technology. And we are hoping to begin to work with the Veterans Hospital Administration as well, so that we can help just create more interoperability between the hospitals and headquarters. So we'd love to work with you to do all those important things, important missions. I want to shift to talk about shattering glass ceilings. The theme for our panel today is about choosing to challenge. And Congresswoman, you have shattered so many ceilings and broken so many barriers. And my question to you is, which ceiling or which barrier are you most proud of shattering or overcoming?
You know, I think the one that I'm the most proud of overcoming, that was probably the most challenging, was, and you know, we've shared this story before, I was 26 years old when I was elected to my state house, and I was the youngest woman ever elected at the time. And I spent nearly my entire adult life as a member of a legislative body and went through all of the major life processes, from marriage at the beginning of that to pregnancy, birth, and then trying to balance a busy legislative career with with motherhood. And every step along the way, I had to make sure that I had everything in place to be a good mother first, because there was nothing more than that. But even going all the way back to when I decided to run, and all the good old boys in my community told me it wasn't my turn, I needed to get online, they would let me know when it was my turn. And I, could have listened to them and just said, all right, I'll wait till when I thought it would be possible for me to run, which would have been many years down the road when I had kids and they were a little older, and then pursue my dream to run. And I was encouraged by a mentor, my predecessor in the legislature, who said, you can do this now, and this is an opportunity and you need to seize this moment. And I was at the point in my life, Nichole, when I had the most flexibility. I was only married for a year when I first ran. I didn't have kids. We had just bought our first house. And so there were a lot of challenges and obstacles. But like I told you, when the times that we've discussed it is, my husband said to me, we'll figure it out. Just move forward. You know that you can get all the moving parts in place, and we'll figure it out. And we did figure it out. And I didn't listen to the good old boys. And I was in a 6-way primary that I won with 53% of the vote, because I knocked on 25,000 doors. And I busted past the fact that I had no money and that I wasn't the most well-known candidate, but I took my case to people. And to this day, people say to me, Debbie, I still remember when you knocked on my door 28 years ago. Wow. And that no one's knocked on my door since. And you want to make sure, like for me, it was about making sure that people could believe that government could really work for them, and that there was someone in there fighting for them, even when they didn't agree, wouldn't always agree with me. Mm-hmm. And achieving that, and then achieving it again while giving birth to twins. And then when I ran for Congress, being 2 months pregnant with my youngest daughter and running anyway, and winning, and being able to have a husband who fully embraced the egalitarian approach to parenting, and understanding that I needed to put together my village, and that there was no shame in that, and that I needed to put my kids' schedule on my schedule first and build my professional life and work around that. And too bad if somebody didn't like it, because they were the most important thing. And I'm talking to you today in the semester that my youngest daughter graduates from high school. Oh, and my oldest daughter, twins, is graduating from college. And all of my kids got into the college of their dreams, the University of Florida. And my daughter just found that out my youngest daughter just found that out on Friday. So, I think we did something right. And that was not making decisions in fear, and not spending my whole life saying, what if? Well, if you do that, then you'll never, ever be able to achieve the dreams you have. and show other people that something hard can be done.
Well, that is amazing. And at ServiceNow, we talk about workflowing it. And you clearly have learned how to workflow work and home. And if you can teach us how to workflow our morning routine with our little ones at home, that would be great. And also importantly, you've learned how to workflow just service, being a public servant and serving those constituents who I know are proud to have you as their member of Congress. And we cannot wait, to really hit the ground and work with you more closely on just transforming what the military is doing for those soldiers and just transforming the federal government so that we can help you make government work better for your constituents. So thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations to your children.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us for this powerful discussion. Before we close out for the day, Steve Walters, ServiceNow's Vice President of Federal, will give a few remarks.
Wow, Nichole, thank you so much for leading that thought-provoking discussion, especially as we recognize International Women's Day. And thank you to all of our speakers from today's program. Now, before we end today's session, I encourage you to take a moment to go visit our partners located in the Expo Hall. They've got some fantastic solutions that we're delivering across the federal agencies that they'd love to be able to show you. The Expo Hall will remain open until 12 noon today. Thanks again, everyone. I hope you're able to join us again tomorrow at 9 a.m. to hear from federal IT leaders as we talk through a variety of topics from asset management to customer and employee experience, risk management, automation of IT operations, and so much more. I hope everybody has a great rest of today.